As the world struggles, a lot is actually happening in gaming. Games are now filling a vital role in helping people stay, well, sane through these isolating times. But there's more than that. Games are an industry, and that industry has been impacted quite massively. Though, because of its nature, it's an industry that's strongly positioned. So today, we're going to examine the impact on games and their player counts, on the actual development of games, what you can expect there, including, well, what I've had to do with our studio, the shift to digital, how that will impact the future, the impact of the game's media, and of course, what we can actually play. Now, if you want to learn more about that studio and hit up the link below, then sub, of course, for 6 industry news and analysis videos per week. And if you'd like to help us out with the algorithm, then drop a like and you know what? Let me know what games are tidying you through this. I know Doom Eternal's about to come out, but what have you dragged up out of your back catalog to play? Let me know. Okay, let's get into it. Over the weekend, Steam set yet another record with its users, 20 million. CSGO cracked 1 million concurrent players for the first time ever, and Warzone hit 15 million in its first few days. Verizon actually stated that in the USA, gaming is up 75% during peak hours, and that watch time is also up across Twitch and YouTube gaming. Now, in terms of a spike, it makes sense, but if this period of increased activity lasts long enough that it actually becomes a habit for people, I do think we could see a sizable increase in the number of people who are regularly playing games across all platforms. With nothing to do, people will be, well, forced to try something new. I mean, if we just take, a 40,000 feet view and look at the fundamentals here, this is a decently unprecedented set of situations globally in general. But through the life of the games industry, I think it is literally unprecedented. And that is going to force a lot of people into a medium that they've never really tried. So as much as there's a lot of terrible things going on, that's going to have an interesting impact on gaming. A lot of people are going to find something new, and I've got to wonder, especially if, say, for free-to-plays, because of their easy accessibility. I mean, say League of Legends, a lot of people have heard that. Maybe they'll actually try it now that, it's free and they're stuck at home. Now, that said, Steam did hit 19 million concurrents last month, and it has been consistently breaking its own records, as had, say, CSGO. And as for Warzone, I mean, yeah, that was always going to bring in a pretty significant initial audience, though I'm sure that the timing of things probably did work out in Activision's favor. But of course, with things only ratcheting up and perhaps only set to ratchet up more over the next month or two, I've got to wonder if really gaming is going to just see more of an upsurge, as people basically have nothing else better to do. Now, on this topic, there is actually one bit of relevant news coverage, and that is the return of the Steam Game Festival, of course, as announced by Jeff Keighley, and this gives you just a variety of first-look demos at games. This time, it's going to be highlighting indies who would have been a part of GDC's Indie Mega Booth or Day of the Devs showcases. Now, this all kicks off this week, which does mean that, yes, the timing pretty much couldn't be better, and you'll have a bunch of things to try out, assuming you're not playing Doom or Animal Crossing. So, yes, it certainly is good timing for the industry to be scoring brownie points through things like sales and free periods and all of that stuff. I mean, it makes sense. They've got our attention when we're stuck inside. It's a good way to, taking a bit of an advantage of that. I mean, say Ubisoft, right? They don't normally inspire a lot of good press, but their CEO's recent letter to staff, I mean, it was pretty good. It actually seemed pretty decent and human and realistic. And now, of course, many companies will gain from this. I have a little bit of insider knowledge of one company that you likely will have heard of, and, they've experienced, let's just say, a significant uptick in their digital revenues. Now, as for Ubisoft, well, they actually announced a free weekend for Assassin's Creed, and I imagine you'll see a lot of that going on as time goes on. Really, there's just so many opportunities like that for those free weekends that I think you could see it as, capitalizing on it and cashing in on it, but I do think it's a win-win. At the end of the day, consumers have got a lot of free time. That means they've got a high demand for ways to fill that free time. So if a company's going to give somebody a taster, then hey, fair enough. I'm pretty cool with it, I'd say. So with the player side of things covered, let's talk about development, because this will have a profound impact on development. More teams are opting to work remotely, as have ours, with all of our staff across both the game development studio and the YouTube side of the business working from home. Now, while this is feasible enough in the short term for us, It's unclear how sustainable this is going to be in the long run, especially with, say, people's mental health, and also, I'd say, for larger companies who are dealing with more inherent complexity in their structure. Say, Rockstar, right? They're an example of a company that's made the switch. They're confident that Red Dead Online and GTA Online will just continue with minimal disruption. We've got CD Projekt Red, who are also going to be working remotely, but they did actually reaffirm their commitment to Cyberpunk's release date, so it seems like that's not one that's going to be delayed, but of course, delays are a genuine possibility at this stage. Jason Schreier speculated on Twitter that after April's releases, all bets are off in terms of the delays, which, yeah, does make sense. Teams may be working right now with fewer resources because, they're at home. There's going to be just a lot more overhead there. Communication, prioritizing, troubleshooting, all those things are just a little bit harder remotely and all can impact the workflow. That being said, the games industry is remarkably lucky. We're in a position where we can function remotely and where people now have a lot more free time, which is pretty good for the games industry. I mean, this current situation is just wreaking havoc across, say, retail, hospitality, so gaming really does have the luxury of being a digital sector. Like, sure, the workflow issues might cause some delays, but, you can't sell a cup of coffee digitally, can you? Now, of course, resources will dictate whether games will be, comfortably delayed or whether teams will still have to crunch from home to hit a deadline, which certainly does seem like a grim, set of circumstances. Now, for us as an indie, it's been an interesting one. I think, overall across our business, we've got, sort of 10 to 14 people who are regularly about the place, and, that's a lot of people who are now at home. We spent a few days carting our various computers to people's houses to allow them to work from home. For us, we're using things like Monday.com for our task management. We're using Dropbox for file management. And, it's been fine enough. We're using Slack for comms. Stuff's actually going along pretty okay. But that said, with the type of game that we're making and the type of team that we are, it's very possible for us to go digital there. Really, for us, the only pain in the ass about working from home, and this is one that you will also, I think, see for quite a few larger development studios who are dealing with more, just, let's say, hard-to-handle assets. For an example, this video you're watching right now, the raw file of just, my face, this background, that's going to be about 90 gigs. That's a lot of data. We're filming in Blackmagic RAW on an Ursa Pro Mini, which, big, beefy, expensive cine camera, really big files that it spits out. So we've got to do a bunch of encoding, a bunch of uploading, then downloading. That stuff's a pain in the ass. And that's the sort of thing for, for those companies who are dealing with larger files, maybe higher fidelity games, I imagine they're going to be running into some similar issues. But hey, we can still get by pretty easily. And then finally, for the development section of this video, hardware is not going to be immune to these sorts of delays whatsoever. We've already reported this week that the Xbox Series X and PS5 could see a delay because of supply chain issues. Even the Patreon for our Warcraft channel, its pins, had massive supply chain problems because of this. So what could happen? There could be delays, there could be higher pricing because of the availability of parts. It's really up to Microsoft and Sony to decide whether they're going to be absorbing the costs there or passing them on, but certainly there's a lot of potential for delay there, even though right now it does seem like both companies are still targeting the holiday 2020 release date. All right, next up, business and your habits. So I think that gaming could become even more digital, which is of course something that the big companies want. Why? Well, it's pretty obvious. People either can't or won't want to leave their houses to pick up the likes of Doom and Animal Crossing, so instead they will opt to download them. Now, if this situation carries on for a while, well, will people go back to buying discs after maybe a few weeks or months of digital convenience being a thing they're used to? Now, there is one complaint about digital gaming, particularly on the consoles, and that is that it's just too darn expensive. Looking at you, Nintendo. I've got to wonder if that will maybe get more competitive once more people are going digital. Kind of hard to say there, but certainly, given the far better revenue splits of digital goods, publishers will be happy with that trend. Indeed, this will be excellent for, say, digital platform holders like Valve, Epic, Sony, Microsoft. They'll do well out of this. Now, look, sure, many of us still like physical games, but ultimately, content is king and digital will be the main way for people to get games over the next while. Next up, events and their impact. And if you're just thinking about E3, there's more than that, because there's a side to this that, as, customers, you guys won't see, but a lot of us devs, it has impacted a lot of us quite a bit. Hey, I've lost $1.5 grand to this. So, event closures, right? They have happened a lot. You've already heard me talk about this from the consumer and like games announcement side of things with like, say, E3, PAX and stuff like that. But, well, you know, we also run a games company here, right? We couldn't go to GDC. That cost us a lot of money. The next event up is Games Finance Market, which still seems to be going on, oddly enough. But overall, there's a very large impact in business there. So what's actually happening, right? This is going to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain to a side of game development that you won't really see that often. So whenever you go to conventions, you usually end up using a platform like Meet to Match or say GDC Connect. Now on that, it's almost like a speed dating thing, right? You've got your profile with your picture, your company bio and all that stuff. And you know, you're trying to organize meetings with people on that platform. Now, that's how most of those meetings happen. And then after the show, what happens? Well, you're going to be going to bars. Now, it's not just going out getting pissed with the boys. It's, you know, going to the, say, you know, publisher, like, let's choose a publisher out of a hat, right? They will maybe do a dinner. So if it's, say, Gamescom, maybe, I remember there was one Humble hired out a beer hall. So we all went to the beer hall. And that's where a lot of your work gets done. So those things being cancelled actually has got a pretty major impact on development because I'd say this, right? Do deals actually get signed at conventions? No, not really. I've heard tales of like people doing a 15-minute like meeting and actually getting stuff signed, but that is wild. It's not normally what happens. But I'll tell you what does happen, right? You sit down, you have a meeting with someone, maybe you go out drinking with them later, and you start that personal connection, which could be the start of an extremely high value, in terms of literal dollar amount, relationship. Now, can that happen on Skype? It's a lot harder, right? Because you just don't have that physical connection. There's not as much of a social element there. So that's a fairly major thing the developers will be missing out on. And it's the sort of thing where, will consumers care about that? No, they won't. But what might happen is, yeah, there may have been a few games that, you know, maybe would be signed because a conversation got started at a certain convention, maybe GDC, and maybe those will be a little bit later. Maybe the deal making there that actually does result in games getting made and getting in your hands will be a little bit delayed. It's not the largest thing in the universe, but certainly a lot of developers are out $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, maybe $10,000 for the smaller ones, and then a hell of a lot more than $10,000 for the developers who maybe had proper setups at GDC purchased and have pretty much lost all of that. So there's a little bit of a peek behind the curtain to just what the biz side of things, you know, what actually happens there when those big events get cancelled. Really on this topic, the whole question is just how long, I would say, right? Like preparations for Gamescom are still full speed ahead from the event organizers. Now that's an event that is scheduled for the last week in August, so presumably their thinking is it will be out of the woods by then. The same goes for Develop Brighton, which is due to take place in July, which, I mean, it still has its preparations in full swing, but I wouldn't be too sure if it would actually happen. I mean, there's just so many rumblings of this situation lasting for months, so we'll have to see if that's feasible. But yeah, there you go. That's a part of the impact that you maybe will not have seen as much. And then finally, I just want to mention the back catalog. So here's what I've been playing: Subnautica, Doom 2016, getting into Final Fantasy XIV, RimWorld, and StarCraft 2, one of my like all-time favorites. That's what my back catalog has been. But the thing is, there's so many games out there. I mean, there's obviously terrible things going on in the world right now. I know it sounds a bit silly to be talking about, oh yeah, you know, we get some time off, I can play video games. I know that's, you know, a bit of an odd thing to say, but hey, you got to do something in your, you know, newfound spare time if you get it, right? So I'd love to know what's in your back catalog. There's, you know, those are the games that I'm playing. With RimWorld especially, I can't wait to get mods. From what I understand, there is a RimWorld mod that gives you conveyor belts. Now, if a video game gives me conveyor belts, I will be ludicrously excited. The likes of Factorio, of Satisfactory, man, they rustle my jimmies well, so can't wait to do that in RimWorld. That's what I'm doing in gaming, though, you know, with my back catalog. Obviously, I'm getting into Doom very soon. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'd love to hear what you're doing, though, because, I mean, hey, I get some ideas from the comment section. So let me know. Thank you for watching this video. And if you've got any just, you know, interesting, relevant stories, stuff going on, do let me know. It's quite the situation out there, isn't it? So thank you for watching. Stay safe, watch your hands, and I'll see you next time.